Today we're going to talk about a very important and popular topic right now, net neutrality.
Hello, and welcome to Disenthrall, the show where we discuss philosophy, politics, and current events. I'm Patrick Smith.
And I'm Ryan LaMarche. During any given day, a person will visit several different websites, download music off of iTunes or Amazon, and maybe download a torrent for a manual or a self-help book. Currently, all this data is hopefully sent to you at the same speed. In fact, it should be sent to you at the speed that you paid for. This is a neutral net, an internet where all data is treated equally. Unfortunately, there are companies that wish to change this, and instead give certain data priority over others. The FCC is laying out new rules that don't protect the users of the internet from prioritized data. And internet service providers have already been trying to speed up your connections to certain content while slowing others down. Now, the net neutrality is definitely not a new concept. In fact, the FCC brought up the issue of net neutrality in 2008 in response to an action taken by Comcast. Turns out that people in those days were using the internet to download music, movies, and even porn off of internet sites such as BitTorrent. Comcast, being all about customer service, decided to look at the traffic on their network, and during their investigation, they found illegal peer-to-peer transfers were using up a significant amount of their bandwidth. To clear up this congestion on the network, in order to allow their customers to perform more legal transfers, they decided to throttle back on all connections to illegal peer-to-peer sites. This means that if a customer was using BitTorrent technology to download something from the internet, that your download speeds for that activity would be slower than that of all other activities that were deemed more legitimate. In response, the FCC ruled that Comcast violated the law by arbitrarily slowing down their customers' connection, and Comcast complied for the moment, but they continued to fight in the courts. 2 years later, Comcast won an appeals court case in which it was determined that the FCC did not have the required authority to regulate how Comcast provides internet connection to their customers. Even though they won in the courts, Comcast decided to adhere to the FCC vote anyways and stop throttling illegal peer-to-peer connections. In the same year, the FCC issued the Open Internet Order, which prohibited wired internet providers from blocking or prioritizing any content to their customers. The rules set forth in the Open Internet Order failed to regulate wireless or mobile connections. Now, what held back the FCC's authority to regulate how internet service providers provide content to their customers was ISPs were and still are classified as information services instead of a public utility. The FCC was reminded of their lack of authority when Verizon sued them, claiming that the Commission didn't have the authority to make those rules pertaining to Open Internet Order or enforce them over internet service providers like itself. This then leads to 4 years of failed FCC regulation of ISPs. In May of this year, the FCC announced a notice for proposed rulemaking, which is basically them telling the public that they want to create new regulations for cable companies and want the public's opinion on the proposed changes. In this notice of proposed rulemaking, there are 3 major rule changes. The first one says that broadband providers must provide performance reports that disclose certain things like average speeds on their networks and any websites that they have decided to block. This was included to increase the transparency of cable companies and to make all their customers feel like they can't hide anything from them. Note that this implies that they can block some websites. The next rule states that no internet service provider can block any lawful internet services or apps, which is pretty straightforward. This means that anything deemed by the company or government to be illegal can be blocked now. And the last and most important rule bans any commercially unreasonable practices. This is taken to mean that cable companies can't purposely slow your connection to a website below what you've paid for. Now, this is where the FCC has left the door open for ISPs to make arrangement with content providers to prioritize their traffic for a fee. The ISPs cannot slow your connection down, but they sure as hell can speed up the connections of certain services for money. Stacy Higginbotham of gigaom.com makes a good point when saying, the agency wants to ensure that the spirit of network neutrality lives on, but legally it has to use a standard that opens the door to prioritization.
So what's the telecompany's perspective on all of this? And let's be specific, because we're not talking about all telecom companies, mainly just the really big ones that have the market share and the money to make a significant impact on the way we all get to access the internet. We're talking about Time Warner, Comcast, the Eye of Sauron that is AT&T, Verizon, and Cox, right? So why do they feel justified in fighting the FCC and the majority of American opinion on this issue? Well, first of all, it's their damned network. It's their equipment. It's their effort was used to build it. Their investors risked their own assets making it all happen over the years. So they should be damned well able to do with it what they want. There are a lot of arguments to be made against this, like, well, a lot of it was built with money given to them from the government and taxpayers, and therefore we should have a say in how it's used. But we need to address this up front. From a factual standpoint. These arguments, for the most part, don't hold water because very few, if none, of these agreements where tax dollars were given to companies actually included the stipulations regarding any kind of ongoing control to any degree by the state or local governments where taxpayers get some sort of say. Money is generally given to these companies to entice them to improve services in their area. They beg them to come. So when they accept the money, they are only obligated to do just that in most cases. While it may feel right that the public at large should have some sort of control over things once this transaction has taken place, it's just not there when you look at it from the legal reality of it all. So simply put, they feel justified to make calls on how their networks operate because they actually are in fact justified. It is their property, plain and simple. Now, let's talk about what exactly is causing these telecom companies pain. What could incentivize them into wanting to change up how things have always worked with the internet? The problem from the point of the ISP is really that all of their different customers don't use their connections equally. Some barely touch their allotted bandwidth. Others become massive traffic consumers. Because most commonly, in America at least, internet is not billed according to how much data you use, but instead by how fast that data can be transferred to your house. This means that for them to support a certain subsection of their users, like me, that consume large quantities of data, such as avid Netflix watchers and BitTorrenters, etc., they have to upgrade their infrastructure. Netflix alone accounts for 30% of all downstream traffic during peak hours. Supporting the extra infrastructure to cover that extra traffic only for certain users costs money, and lots of it. Without being able to charge users according to their individual usage, this leaves them effectively having to spread that added cost of the high-end customers over all their customers, adding pressure to raise rates on everyone. The other option is, of course, to make arrangements with the internet services that are being accessed the most to try and generate extra revenue on the back end to cover the extra network infrastructure required without having to raise rates on anyone. So this whole thing can sort of make sense to a certain degree. Even without the back-end revenue streams from companies like Netflix, you can see the benefits that could be made available to people in need of low-cost internet service, for example. Take a poor family, for instance. They need simple internet access to handle email for their job and simple entertainment or news here and there. Their ISP could offer them a service plan at a fraction of the cost in exchange for them not being able to access Netflix or Hulu or BitTorrent. For some people, this would be a great thing. In order to save money on a utility that they pretty much have to have in this day and age, especially if they have children, they could happily forego some of the high bandwidth services. This is something that will be completely eliminated by government intervention into net neutrality. If it passes, then they have to give the same tubes to everyone equally. All right, so that's the end of the presentation piece, but I think we're left with a ton of stuff to talk about.
A shitload.
A shitload even. All right, man, so I think I took more notes for kind of our discussion section than I even, contributed to the actual presentation, just because there's so much to talk about that's really not covered by kind of the reality of the facts, right? Mm-hmm. So I can just go down these if you're cool with that.
Yeah. In fact, there's just like a totally different tangent kind of that we got to.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like it's related, but it's actually really related to, especially the ISPs.
First, I want to say, you made me defend Comcast. I feel a little dirty right now. So just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Didn't appreciate that. You're being the bad guy next time.
Patrick, don't you love AT&T? Please stay with us.
Oh my God. I don't think I should say anything because they are my ISP.
Yeah. Are you using AT&T to
upload
this video?
And I'm already having massive, multi-month problems with them, so I better keep my mouth shut.
Aren't you using AT&T to upload the video?
Maybe. All right. Okay, so the first section of notes I took was why was this law called for? Why do people want it? Why do people want net neutrality? So I basically wrote, people don't want to purchase internet in the same way they purchase cable, right? So you buy cable TV and they give you, this 4-tiered list of channel options.
All this
you can be
bullshit.
like the gray tier, the crap tier, the green tier, the orange tier, the platinum tier or whatever. And you can't get anything a la carte. You have almost no say over anything, right? And then there's all these complicated add-ons and stuff. And people see it as a real possibility, right? For if there's no regulation or oversight, that these companies are going to try and do that with the internet. So it'd be something like, I want an internet service. Well, would you like our package that includes Netflix and Forbes.com? Oh, no, sorry, Bing.com doesn't come with that package. If you want Bing, you have to upgrade to the platinum package for another $20 a month.
I would always get Bing.
So they get you, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. When I had cable TV, before I canceled my TV because of the internet, I watched like 3 stations. And I still had to pay for one of their top packages because the only stations I watched were.
Yeah. I mean, I've brought this up with my mom, actually, because she's a very avid television watcher. I was like, how many television stations do you actually watch? And I'm like, it's like E! Entertainment News or whatever, and Bravo. It's like 2 stations you're watching. And it's like, why do we pay like $60 a month for this great package when we're not using shit?
This actually was brought up in my research when I was trying to figure out why small cable and internet provider startups have a difficult time competing. It's because there's a big kind of consortium that they have to join that kind of forces them into that channel tier structure. Mm-hmm. So they can't outcompete the big companies with better service by like a la carte type things or whatever, because they're forced to kind of join this consortium or pay like absorbent rates that they can never compete with. So that is there and could very well become there for the internet in 15 years or whatever.
So these are kind of on the surface net neutrality like sides that people are taking. Like they're not really getting down deep into the actual problem. It's just like, holy shit, it's going to be the same as my cable provider. I'm going to have to pick a package, and that's just kind of the side that they're taking. This is their facts they're bringing to the table to before net neutrality.
Yeah, and to be perfectly fair, it's the same companies, so why wouldn't you expect them to do that, right?
Yeah,
because it makes them more money,
right? Yeah,
but to also be fair, no one has mentioned actually doing this. None of the companies have mentioned even a bit, even the idea of doing this to the internet. So this is all just kind of hearsay, but still, like I said, it's the same companies, right? Mm-hmm. So
it's within the realm, but in all fairness, it hasn't been even talked about yet.
Right. But I mean,
except by these activists,
it would still be bad.
Yeah, that would be terrible.
Okay, so the next thing I have here is another big fear that people have is like independent artists or small businesses, startups, inventors, entrepreneurs would then have to compete for the upper tier bandwidth with the big companies, even though they have no money or don't have the money that the big companies do on the internet. So the thing that kind of there's some weird language here where they say we're not going to throttle bandwidth for normal sites. We're just going to allow the big sites with money to get faster speeds. So the thing is, the way it works is like there's bandwidth, right? And if everyone is in the middle and they have the ability to accelerate some people, well, the middle just becomes the bottom, and the top tier still has the faster service. So whether or not you actually slow these people down and keep the big companies the same, or speed the big companies up and keep the rest of the people where they are, you've still created kind of a two-tier structure.
Right.
So where everyone else is slower, the people that don't have the money is slower, and the people that do have the money are faster. Yeah. And so let's say I know I'm talking a lot, so interrupt me if you want, but
I was just going to say really quick, if you're looking at it in terms of equity, this is like, just think about it. If you're sitting at home on your couch and you want to watch a show and it's provided on Amazon and it's provided on Netflix, but your cable provider has decided to prioritize Netflix's. Well, if you're going to watch the exact same show, what the hell are you going to choose? You're definitely going to choose Netflix because, you're not going to have to worry about any buffering, any stoppages in your viewing. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You're going to choose Netflix.
Okay, so based on your research, would the current FCC proposed rules allow this accelerated versus normal?
Right.
So
this is it. The companies themselves, if there was no regulation at all, they would allow for slowing all their competition down. And also creating these fast lanes for other companies. Like it's a free for all. It's like the Wild Wild West that they want to have. But with the FCC regulations, it only leaves open fast lanes. It doesn't allow any slowage of your connection at all.
But it's effectively the same thing, which I think was my point.
Kind of,
right?
yeah. So you're saying that it creates a new standard, kind of.
Well, it's effectively the same thing, whether you speed these guys up or slow these guys down, because what it is these guys are the startups. These guys are the next Facebook killers that are going to try and create a new website that takes Facebook out. And
please do that.
yeah, please. And so these people are going to have a much harder time taking Facebook out if their site is consistently slower than Facebook. And that's what I have a problem with.
Oh, yeah.
And that will happen whether you move the top end up or the bottom end down. That happens both ways.
Right.
So,
I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the point I wanted to make.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Let's see. They don't want toll roads on the superhighway. This is just buzzwords. I don't really care about. They don't want toll roads on the superhighway. No one calls it the superhighway.
We need to make sure that you understand this Java internet talk here.
I mean, the only people that call it tubes are just calling it tubes to make fun of the guy that thought it was tubes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway. So then we already kind of addressed this. They don't want their internet provider forcing them to use a specific service like Bing instead of what they want, like Google or Hulu instead of Netflix, whatever. They don't want to be charged different rates depending on what websites they use, like current cable TV structures. So I think
a good example of like Google versus Bing argument would be that Google actually teamed up with Verizon before the FCC they brought these new regulations in 2010 through the Open Internet Order. Now before that, Verizon and Google were trying to team up in response to these new regulations being brought by the FCC and be like, hey, we can regulate ourselves. So let's just say that went through and that the FCC never came out with this open internet order and subsequently never came out with these new regulations to bring it out. Then obviously Google would be teamed up with Verizon. So Verizon would be on Google's side. So of course they would be like, okay, we're going to prioritize Google search over Bing. Okay.
Sure.
So then
Bing you, man. Bing you.
Bing would die. Bing would
die.
Yeah. Well,
we gotta stop using Bing. That's an unfortunate example.
It's thriving now.
Is it?
No.
Sorry.
No, but effectively on Verizon's network, Bing would die. Would not be used.
Yeah.
Because
be used less.
And it's because of this connection with Verizon and Google. It's a way to just knock out anybody that they're not aligned with.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
That was just like an example of this. There's this weird connection between Google and Verizon, and that's going to benefit those people. Verizon's like it's going to benefit Verizon to use Google.
Yeah, it would be like Samsung teaming up with AT&T to make the best, cheapest Androids, but only AT&T gets them. It would be the same thing. Like if you want Google, you better have Verizon. Mm-hmm. Oh, that would be terrible, right?
Yeah. And AT&T's got Bing, I guess. They would do that. I don't know. They probably would. Damn it. Is there another search engine that is like comparable to Google? Let's use another service. Yeah.
Yeah, but on the flip side, like, it's their network. Like, who are we to tell them what to do with their stuff? That is what I have a problem with, and we can get to that later.
If you want to go on like a weird philosophical...
Oh, we're getting there.
Yeah. Okay.
We're getting there.
Okay.
Okay, so who's right? More regulation or more freedom for the big telecom business? Do we regulate them? Do we let them have free reign and kind of competition, right? So And this is kind of where I get into kind of the surface level stuff. So, and kind of an out there example, but it makes the point. Most people tend to deal with problems at a more surface level. For example, back in the days of slavery, and I know this is kind of an out there example, but it still makes the point.
It's relevant.
Yeah, people saw the things that were going on. They witnessed the evil results of it all. And what they said was things like, hey, we should really do something. We should think about treating our slaves better. We should, to be a good master, you should try and educate your slaves with math or reading or something. This obviously does nothing for the real problem. These efforts only address the effects of the much deeper problem. Obviously, the correct answer was to abolish slavery outright. The same thing is happening here. FCC enforced net neutrality is a surface solution to a mere effect of the actual deep down underlying problem. But I think first let's address the current solutions on the table as it stands, and then we can maybe get down to the root problem. So I guess the first solution is kind of what everybody's calling for these days. What's the dude with the comedy show that had a hilarious bit?
John Oliver.
John Oliver.
Yeah.
Watch it. It's funny.
It is hilarious.
Anyway. And who was the other one that did a really good video? College Humor. College Humor did a really good video on this too. Yeah. Both people basically call for the typical kind of statist solution, right?
We'll link those down in the description.
Got it.
Yeah.
So both of those people, and all the mainstream people, because this is just how everyone thinks these days, they just call for the typical statist solution: get the government to fix problem, fill in the blank.
Yes.
And this is kind of because this is the only way people can see these things work. So anyway, let's at least cover those solutions and just kind of maybe even pick it apart.
Okay.
So giving the FCC power to control our ISPs is a terrible solution, in my opinion, as it has been in every other instance of people using government to attempt to fix things through the force of government control. We would be flinging open the door for corporatism and lobbyists, a door that is currently certainly not closed, but also is certainly not wide open. So the moment you hand something over to the government to control, it's no longer a matter of choice made by customers in a voluntary way. It's now moved into the world of special interests, big corporate money, and lobbyists who will always be there manipulating the guns and the power and the coercion of government. It's not a solution. It only removes the anxiety people have about their ISPs controlling their content. It doesn't solve the problem. That's what government involvement does in our society. It stops people from having to worry about problems. It stops them from keeping an eye on things and actually watching what's going on, because now the government will handle it for them, right? Only the government is quite inept at doing just about anything. When force is used, and this is important, when force is used to attain an end, it always ends badly and turns out worse for all involved. Right. The people using the force and the people having it used against them. So that's kind of my general critique of let's get the government to keep the net neutral. Because to do that, you have to use the force of government. And it never turns out. And it never works.
So they're even talking about this, about the FCC announcing this new notice for proposed rulemaking, which brings in these 3 new laws. And they also, and I was saying that the notice for proposed rulemaking allows them to hear comments from the public. So it's like, yay, like we get to hear what the public thinks.
They're listening to us.
Yeah. Well,
they care.
This also allows for 120 days, right? It's going to end on September 10th. I think it's 120 days or something like that. But this also allows them to have that time to hear very strong opinions from corporations, from lobbyists, from all these other people. And they were saying, in this one article I was reading, like, who do you think they're going to listen to more? Do you think they're going to listen to just like the normal person on the street that's sending in a comment? Or do you think they're going to listen to the people with a shitload of money that have a really big dog in a fight?
Or that used to be in the industry. The current head of the FCC, appointed by Obama,
head lobbyist,
was the head lobbyist for these companies.
Yes.
So his job was to go out and get people in government to do what the telecoms wanted. And, distribute money and all that good stuff.
Which means he has a lot of really good friends still that are working for these companies.
Yeah. What a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
What a conflict of, I mean.
Well, this happens constantly in this like very corporatist state that we live in, where whenever someone's done at a company, it's like, oh, I reached the top. Time to move over to government because I still need to make more money.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for some reason, no one looks for these conflicts of interest when they make these appointments.
Right. Well, and they know it's
obvious.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, they know that the public's not paying enough attention.
Right.
The people that are paying enough attention, this is just a status quo. It's just a business as usual. Yeah. So they don't give a shit.
Yep. All right. So this next piece is kind of in addition to, so people, despite a ton of evidence to the contrary, think that this time the regulators will get it right for them. They ignore every other time the regulations have made things worse. But let's say they do come up, let's just say they do come up with just the right witch's brew recipe that levels everything out and gets the people what they're looking for. Do they really trust that in 5 years, the lobbyists sent by these companies or other special interests won't have plenty of time to move in and do things like creating exceptions to the rules for certain types of services? I think when I was reading the actual rule proposals, it had already talked about a couple holes, exemptions to this rule for medical uses and things like that. So it would be easy to just expand those exemption sections for whatever special interest comes along with the money. 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 15 years. This goes on. This is not just today. This debate, this rule of law doesn't end today and doesn't stay where it is today. Do they really trust in 5 years the lobbyists sent by these companies won't create exceptions? I wonder if those people were told that the amount of money Comcast alone spends on lobby. This is crazy. This is a nugget. This is a gem in here. I wonder if those people were told that the amount of money Comcast alone spends on lobbying to control the government is second only to a national defense contractor. If they would still trust this industry in government's corrupted, controlling hands. What if they knew that the guy running the FCC was the guy in charge? I think we already mentioned this. The guy in charge of the industry's lobbying group only a few years ago. Do they really think that here's just one example of what could happen among many. Do they really think that conservative groups that brought us the absurd profanity rules in place for broadcast TV won't get something on the books a few years from now to clean up the internet?
Yes. I mean, this has been a huge fear among many people saying, net neutrality is a big issue, but like, holy shit, censorship of the web, that has far-reaching implications. Data being treated equally, that's all good and well, but imagine that data never even being able to reach you because it's just gone. It's not even on the web anymore.
Right now, the FCC doesn't really oversee much on the internet, right?
Yeah, which is awesome.
But now, we're opening these doors. We're opening these doors, and these doors don't close when they're open.
Yeah, like I was saying, the FCC doesn't have much regulation control or authority right now because, these internet companies are labeled as information services, which is like Title I of the Communications Act. But this is a step. This is a step to them being like, okay, well, we believe that these regulations have worked out well, so why don't we just move on to labeling internet companies Title II, which is like a public utility, where we can have more control, because obviously this control has had really good results, so we want better results just to keep the internet free.
They're going to push whatever paper they have to push to increase their power. It's just how it goes, right? Yeah.
More power always.
So that's just one example from the conservative side. Let's switch sides. What about on the other side when these liberal fascists that push for and are still pushing for things like the fairness doctrine that would require all people discussing an issue on, public services to present both sides in a fair way? Hell no. I mean, we both sides of the aisle, this dog and pony show, have their own things that they want to come in and steal your liberty from. And anytime you give government something, you give these groups handles, things to grab onto. Let me just finish reading this. Placing this critical piece of our world culture into the state's control basically attaches handles to something that currently has none. Handles that will provide the very powerful people using government to push their views something to grab onto, to push and pull our freedoms. No, once you summon into existence this demon of government, this demon of government control, you don't get to control its actions. It simply doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. This is funny because we always imagine content providers trying to pay internet companies for their data being prioritized, like Netflix or anything like that. But imagine political parties paying internet service providers for their content to be prioritized.
Yeah.
Or other Holy shit. Because you know that it's always like a big war between these two parties of who has more money to put into these elections. Well, why the hell would you spend that money on like ads or anything like that when you can block what people see on the internet?
Or even just, change the ease of access.
Yeah.
If it's harder
don't
for
block, but you can prioritize your information over another party's information.
Yeah.
That's
That gets into some stuff that we should talk about. What's that government? Russian? Ukraine? There's
the Ukrainian what?
I think it was
the plane.
No. Sorry, it was Britain. The Britain version of the NSA
the security agency,
has a whole new suite of software tools that do some not just spy things, but like creepy things. And we should do a show on that. Things that are like what you're talking about, where they try and bend public opinion and make certain groups seem bigger or more popular than they are. Anyway, what about that rule that states no internet service provider can block any lawful internet services or apps? So
what are the rules? Like what's the rubric they're going to use to say what's lawful and what's not lawful?
Yeah, who makes up these definitions? And it's whoever it is. It's not going to be somebody we agree with, probably. Right? So what is it? No internet service provider can block any lawful internet services or apps.
Yeah.
So who determines what's lawful?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we talking like...
We know that the government can conjure up some weird interpretation of a word or even a rule, It's like, ooh, what's lawful to us? And then,
whistleblowers.
Yeah.
WikiLeaks. Would be shut down very easily under this, right?
Yes.
I have to assume if the government has any involvement in determining what constitutes something illegal.
I mean, okay, yeah. Because, the whistleblower for WikiLeaks, Manning, right? They threw him in solitary confinement. They believe that he, did not obey the law, did something very bad to the United States. Of course, the medium that he used was WikiLeaks to put out his information. They're going to shut down WikiLeaks because they released some very unlawful information into the internet.
But some would say necessary.
Yeah, I would say. Of course, we would say it's necessary and it was a very good thing. But to the government, it was definitely not. Did not shed them in very good light.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Unlawful.
Yeah, unlawful indeed. And
it's not it's not like illegal. It's lawful. So I have to is that a broader definition? Like right. Any law? Like jaywalking.com? That's kind of unlawful. Yeah. Okay, so the next kind of vague thing that I caught from listening to you was bans on commercially unreasonable practices. Right. What does that mean?
Yes, well, it was taken to mean that they won't slow your internet connection down below what you paid for. Okay. That's what it was supposed to mean.
Yeah. Oh, I don't understand why they didn't say that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, why didn't they just spell it out?
Like, this is a back door.
Well, they wanted to keep it broad and
undefined.
Undefined, yeah.
Yep. So they can define it later.
Well, yeah, and that phrase can be put up to the highest bidder, Any company can come in and be like, "Hey, we'll define that term for you."
Yep.
And that'll be then put into the books.
Yep. Yeah. So when you put vague language into rules for no reason, and let's be perfectly clear, there's no reason for them to say commercially unreasonable practices instead of companies aren't allowed to slow people's internet down below what they're paid for any services on the internet, right? That's easy, that's clear, that's specific. You can't argue with that. You might find other things that need to be added in the future, but that's clear. Commercially unreasonable practices, this could be anything. Yeah. All right. So
it's kind of like the whole lawful thing. It's like these terms, they purposely put in there that are just extremely vague and up for interpretation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. All right. So, and the another point I want to make is that we're at the very beginning of this. This thing is a baby. It's been around since kind of 2008, mainly 2010, and is really only catching on now. People are paying attention because John Oliver, he's awesome. So I guess my point is this thing is already so backwards and full of vagaries and loopholes. Imagine where it is in 5 years. Imagine where it is in 15 years after all these
It's already hitting a pretty high scale of scariness.
after all these entities have had time to sink their claws in, get their lobbyists on board, get a new FCC chairman pulled freshly from the lobby group, who knows? This is insane.
Yeah.
So, okay. So my next section is kind of the flip of that. So let's say remember the assumption was they got all the regulations right now. Okay. So now we're going to flip that. Now let's say they get it wrong. And let's be honest, they're going to get it wrong. And that's pretty much a guarantee. Then what? You think we can just get it changed real quick? You think we can just clear it up? Yeah, because government works like that, right? It's real fast. Yeah. So now we're in a situation where there are rules in place damaging the internet as a whole, which is very, very likely. Innovation, freedom, speech, everything is being affected. And to fix it, we have to do what? We have to go back to the government. Yes. We have to go back to the FCC. We have to ask them, hey, can you try that again? Can you fix that? Can you stop effing us? And there's a process for that. This process takes time, though. Mm-hmm. We have to have time for public comment, 3 months.
Even court cases.
Yeah. Time for regulators to stick their political fingers into the wind and feel out what's in their best interests to put forward. Delays, lawsuits causing more delays, and something even worse, more opportunities for lobbyists to insert more of their changes into things in the mix. If we're already changing it, give us an opportunity to change a few things too, right? Yeah. What I'm describing here is not some wild speculation as to edge cases on what may happen in the distant future. This is the well-worn path of every time the government touches anything ever. This is how it will go because this is how it always goes. To think otherwise is naive and shows a blind spot to history. And I'm going to try this. It's Latin. Okay. Summum summa injuria. It's by Cicero, and it means more law, less justice. That means the more laws we have on the books, the less justice we get. This is that situation.
What really stands out to me with this section is the United States is their innovation, their ability to produce some really great products and services and stuff like that, and the fact that if these regulations really screw up the internet for us, think about how far back we're going to be taken back compared to all the other countries. Mm-hmm. We could fall 10 years behind everybody else in all of our products and services and all that kind of stuff. And
we could fall 10 years behind other countries in 2 years. Yeah. That's how it works in technology.
Yeah. If we don't have the infrastructure and all that in place, the freedom in the internet, it's all going to go to crap. It's right now we're ahead barely. We're on a very thin ice right now.
Yep. Okay. So I think we've kind of hashed out and covered the government solution, and I hope we've made a solid case for why it's not only wrong because it's immoral. The initiation of use of force to enforce this stuff is immoral, but we've also made the case for why, even if it were moral, it's very dangerous. Yes, right? Yes. It's not going to be how we think it is. It's not going to turn out how you want it to turn out. That's just not how it works.
It never does.
Ever. Okay, so we've kind of shot that down. That's kind of what everybody wants, and we've just taken
first it. First, we told you why the government solution is wrong. Now let's tell you why the other solution is also wrong.
So what's the alternative? Leave these companies alone. Let me just get to it. So what's the other option? Normally my answer would be to leave people and companies alone to be subject to the market forces, to be subjected to the competition to control their bad behavior.
Yes, let the free market do what it's supposed to do.
Thank you. Right. Yes. Unfortunately, this is why that solution won't work. Like so many other areas these days, there really is no free market in this arena. The punishment of the free market is no longer on this table. It's no longer on the table because there's very little free market left in this industry, thanks to the corporatism that already has taken root in the rest of this market, starting with cable TVs and all the telecom industries that have been around forever. Mm-hmm. So I want to examine closely some of the specific reasons why competition is failing us in this area, why we can't turn to this as a solution. So number one.
And this is really, it's very, very, very relevant for people because they experience this in their daily lives whenever they try and move and find an internet service in their location.
Yeah, and this we're about to get to the root, to the actual, like I was mentioning earlier. Now we're not talking about a surface problem. Now we're going to go into, we're going to discuss the root that is causing all of our worries about net neutrality.
Yes.
So you can't really switch internet companies, can you?
Not really.
Everyone pretty much knows this story, right? You move into an area only to find that you have basically one or two options for internet. One of those options is usually terrible, and the other one is one of the big 3 or 4 telecoms that you truly hate with a passion. But what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it?
Take it.
Take it. You're going to call up ISR and you're going to be like, please give me some internet, please.
Because you need it.
Yeah. I'll wait between the hours of 12 and 8 p.m. Maybe you'll show up. Yeah, you have no choice.
Because I'm a bitch.
Yeah, you're there, bitch.
Yeah, pretty much.
So as of and the numbers back it up. So as of early 2013, about 30% of U.S. households live in an area with only a single internet provider offering at least 6 meg down. The other 70% may have more options, but often the competing providers don't offer the higher end speeds to all areas within those neighborhoods. So the numbers are kind of tricky, but it again limits people's ability to choose a competitor. So I'm in a major metropolitan area. I literally have a neighbor behind my house who has some of the fastest internet you can get in the country. I am literally 15 feet from him. And because some politicians and some state or local governments made some kind of decisions for me, I am stuck getting some of the worst internet.
Oh, yeah. Oof. Almost slipped up there.
That you can get.
Yeah.
And there is not a damn thing I can do about it.
Yeah.
I could switch to one of the other providers that is available, but their service is nothing.
Unfortunately, it's going to be worse.
Yep.
Than what you think. What we think is worse.
Yep.
It's worse than the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Where's that competition now?
That's my next little line here. Where are the competitors?
Yes.
The solution is the free market. The solution is competition. What was it? I think I saw this on the internet today. The two major ones, Comcast and Time Warner, are like the most hated companies in the country.
Oh, yeah.
This is proof positive that there is no competition in this area. You don't have companies get this large and this powerful and this, I have Sauron. In a capitalistic environment, in a competitive environment.
Right.
So where are the competitors? And this is a lot of research I did kind of figuring out where these people are.
Right.
Where are the young startup lions fighting tooth and nail to take down the slow, expensive, crappy elephants that we pretty much all hate? Well, I did the research, and as it turns out, it's almost impossible to be a successful internet provider. To be a successful internet provider startup for a few reasons. Number one, the permits required, and this is interesting, the permits required to get new infrastructure installed to provide service to people's homes, the costs of something called a franchise agreement, and rights to access the easements around homes is extremely expensive. So for startups, this means that getting loans for this is very difficult because they need huge loans, and the time to get a return on investment for investors is 5 to 10 years. So you're talking about not only a large loan, but, oh, by the way, you're not going to see anything on this for 5 or 10 years. And that's if we're lucky. Mm-hmm. So investors don't touch it. So startups don't have the money. And so government regulation, the costs of permits is a negative.
That's not it.
What?
That's not it, though.
Yeah.
There's more.
Oh, we got more. But wait. Number 2, partnering with local governments runs rampant. Companies get big money from governments, state and local, to improve services in an area. Startups are at a real disadvantage because they're often shut out from the stream of money. And it's obviously impossible to compete with someone that's getting a large stream of free money that then helps cover and lower the costs of their business.
You know what's really funny about this is that
nothing.
It's ironic
Okay.
because the governments are partnering with these companies. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they want really good internet. Exactly. Isn't that really funny? They're like, we want really good internet, so we're going to let you just be the only internet provider in this area and allow you to be the internet provider in this area, just competitor free. We're not going to allow, and you're going to be able to give everybody really shitty internet with no consequences.
No, I think you just said that government is trying to help and they're actually making it worse.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It's really weird how that happens, but it happens all the damn time.
That should be the name of this whole show. We should like paint it really big on the wall.
Yeah, right.
Okay, number 3, lawsuits. And this is from multiple business owners of startups in this industry. They say there has almost never been a startup that they've seen in an area with an incumbent service provider that was not hammered for years by frivolous lawsuits designed to drain the smaller companies' wallets. Incumbents are notorious for these suits designed to delay and increase the barrier to entry costs for startups. Most of these suits, and this is how you know they're frivolous, most of these suits end up getting thrown out right away or are never pursued by larger companies. They're simply designed to get the startups to pay the lawyers $400 an hour.
Just another weapon in their repertoire of the internet companies.
They have money.
Yeah.
The little guys don't.
Yeah.
Let's stop them from competing with us. I mean, as far as like, how can we best use our war chest of money to advance our business? Well, we're going to do that by getting rid of competitors. And if we can use a little bit of money to pay some lawyers to drain them, then we don't need to spend a lot of money later competing with them.
So these barriers of entry to the internet service provider industry, they're not only high, they're impenetrable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, number 4, last one. Local governments will often, in an attempt to get companies to build out their services in their area, start what are called RFPs, or requests for proposals. Basically, and this is kind of evil, basically they ask companies to bid for the right to build out their fiber networks in their areas, providing the winning bidder an effective monopoly, not an outright, stated overtly monopoly, but an effective monopoly on the services available for people living there. Startups in these areas have to start from scratch, attempting to get special permission from the city council, who have basically already given their loyalties to whoever won the bidding process. So in short, it rarely happens.
Well, I mean, who always wins in a bidding war? It's the company that has all this money, all these money reserves to spend. It's like a startup is going to come in and be like, man, we need to make a return on investment on this.
Like right now.
Yeah, like right now.
Yeah.
And that big company's like, screw it. We'll just wait till we make a whole shitload of money out of these people that we're going to get provided internet service to.
Or they'll come in and say, look, the little guy, he's going to roll it out over 2 years. We can come in and have you up and running in 6 months.
Yeah.
Yep. And so once they get that favoritism, once they get in the door, the little guy, what is he going to come? I know that they're in the middle of, it's only been 6 months and they've already got internet for everybody, but I want to too. Can I get some permits? Yeah. Well, we're going to have special meetings and we're going to, yeah. And then the lawsuits begin. And
it's this wonderful connection between companies and government.
So that's kind of all I have. Those are kind of the reasons why my research showed that we don't have a bunch of startups popping up, basically running down AT&T.
Right.
It's too expensive. It's too difficult. There's too many barriers, and the government blocks it in an attempt to help it.
Yes.
I think that's a summary.
Right.
So what do we do? And this is just kind of my conclusion. Mm-hmm. Feel free to interrupt me because, it just goes. So,
okay.
so what do we do? Well, I'm certainly interested in freeing up my choice in internet service. I am sick of being stuck with whoever. I literally pick where I live based on the internet because it's so critical for my job. I'm sick of it. I think in light of everything we just went over, it seems the most effective and the most beneficial short-term course of action is to influence our state and local governments to stop effing us over by making it hard and expensive on startups to bring internet to our homes. Our state and local governments are the ones that we all have the most power to affect the most quickly, and this is the easiest way to bring the beast of competition to these large companies. So.
Smells sweet to me.
Yes. But it requires people to do things.
Right. It wouldn't be easy. That's for damn sure.
I don't think I ever propose an easy solution to anything, unfortunately.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the best thing is never easy.
Really? Usually, yeah. Okay, so let's make it almost free for these startups. Like from a government perspective, let's make it as free as possible for these startups to lay their fiber, at least free from fees and hurdles. Make it a simple thing where they just call the city up and say, hey, I'm going to lay some fiber here because I can, so I'm just letting you know. And the city's like, yeah, go for it. Great. Obviously, the best and most moral option is to cut the government off from having a say-so in these matters to begin with. They have no place picking favorites. They have no place granting free rides, giving them our money taken by force. They have no place telling them and us which companies get to reign supreme over our neighborhoods. Next, we need to find a way to rein in these damned lawyers.
Yes.
I think we're about to get sued.
Yeah, right. Well, funny you say that. Here we go. Frivolous lawsuits.
Law is primarily a means of morally justifying and providing structure to the control of people by force. It's also used as a bastardized means of dispute resolution. It has become, or has always been, a club with which people with money can bludgeon their up-and-coming competitors and or enemies with little to no actual cause. Its time has come. Please.
Yes.
Please.
And this is with these frivolous lawsuits happen in almost in every situation where a company wants to do something.
Yep.
It's not just this case. It's everywhere, and it always clogs up every single hole of the market. Like it's run rampant. It's crazy.
And I can hear people now like saying, well, that sounded good, but it wasn't actually a solution. Well, it kind of was. Let's get rid of this. There are people much smarter than me with great ideas on how to limit or eliminate this awful litigious crap that is hurting us. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we can talk about those in the future. It'd probably be an amazingly fun discussion. If anyone has some knowledge in the area or knows of an expert that we can talk to, drop us a line.
Yeah.
So here's kind of my final conclusion. And I'm going to wax poetic for a moment. The answer is more freedom, not more regulation on top of an already over interfered with industry. The answer is more consumer choice, not more ability for corporations, politicians, and special interests to lobby for their mostly consumer and freedom negative ends. The answer is to remove the cancer that is the root of the problem, not to depend on bureaucrats to use the immoral force of government in a vain attempt to treat the symptoms.
Yeah, so just to kind of make the connection again, if we allow competition in this industry, then we will have faster internet connections because we'll be able to choose. Companies will feel the consequences of their bad actions and their horrible internet speeds. So then internet speed isn't really an issue anymore.
Yeah, 31. I looked it up. We're number 31 in the world for internet speed.
Yeah. So if internet speeds aren't really an issue anymore, we don't have to worry about data being treated and unequally. Because if one company prioritizes data and we don't want that certain data to be prioritized, then we can just leave and go to another company.
Maybe we didn't paint that picture. Actually, I think we kind of missed that picture in the solution section.
That's what I was kind of trying to bring it connected. So if the company we're with currently prioritizes Netflix's data, but we use Hulu, we can be like, oh shit, well, I'm going to go over to this other company because they don't prioritize.
Bob'sTubes.com.
Yeah.
Bing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you introduce this free market kind of competitor-friendly environment into this industry, then we can pretty much change what these companies do.
Let's apply what an actual competitive environment would look like to all of those items that we listed as people having a problem or being scared about. I think that's a good way to end this, right? People don't want to purchase internet the same way they purchase cable. They don't want to choose a certain package that contains access to specific websites. So it's just like what you said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, just saying, you can either go to another cable company that has better packages, or you can go to another company that doesn't even do the package system. They do it a better way.
Yep. Or a company that blocks a lot of sites and gives you dirt cheap internet.
There you go. Yeah, and this allows for complete innovation in companies and companies to do a completely different model that might just fucking wreck shop on all the other models.
That's another important point. When you implement the government, you implement a single solution, and no one can deviate from that solution on pain of death or imprisonment, right?
Right.
So it is
what the government is best.
It is a single solution when you use government. When you implement competition, when you implement free market, you implement a plurality of opinions. You implement a bunch of entrepreneurs, really some of the smartest guys that I've ever met, all trying to find ways to solve your problems better than the next guy. So you have this guy trying that, you have this guy trying that, you have this guy trying this pricing model. There is no way that can't end up better.
Yes.
Okay, so the next thing is, in a free market with competition, how are independent artists, small businesses, startups, things like that, how are those kept from being deprioritized?
Right. I think that there's going to be some companies that are smart, are small business friendly, they favor they enjoy the content from independent artists. They really respect these small businesses and these independent artists, so they're gonna put a lot of emphasis on their work. And so if you really like these artists also, you can go to that company, and that's your niche. There's going to be a lot of niche companies,
and that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Like, I think people are going to be more aware of what's going on when they're not depending on the government to take care of it. Like I'm the point I made earlier.
That was one solution that I just said, but also if you're in a company and they slow down the connection for these small businesses, there's going to be a lot of complaints, and these complaints are going to be answered, because if they're not, then people can be like, well, screw you, and they can go somewhere else.
Yeah, like I said, people are going to be more aware because they're going to know this is a thing. So in a competitive environment, there's a new Facebook competitor up and coming. No one's heard of it yet. People start hearing about it. They start going to access it. The access is terribly slow. The videos shown on the site don't download fast enough. They look on their ISP. They find out this is one of the ISPs that maybe throttle it down or whatever. They're going to call their ISP and say, look, quit it. Or I'm switching. Yeah. I know that when I was when the BitTorrent thing was happening, and a lot of ISPs were, or not a lot of ISPs, it was Comcast only, right? That started throttling. Comcast throttle. I was on Comcast. It was not only
BitTorrent; it was all torrents they were doing it too.
Yeah, and I was on Comcast at the time, and I was one of those people that was getting their connections throttled, and I was livid. Yeah. I was livid. I switched. Yeah. They lost my business. Well, and that's in an environment where the person I switched to left me worse off, but I did it on principle. Yeah. So in a situation of competition, that gets even easier for anyone. Yeah. Okay, so the last point is from the user's perspective of kind of what people are worried about is they don't want their provider forcing them to use specific service like Bing instead of whatever. But I think we already kind of covered that, right? So
So if you're forced to use Google instead of Bing, and you just for some reason love Bing, then you can either switch companies or you can complain to your company that this is bullshit. I want to be able to use Bing and Google. And you're going to change the way that companies view these services in terms of the customers. They're going to be like, oh shit, our customers both want Google and Bing. Maybe we should provide them, or else they're going to switch, or they're going to, buy a cheaper package because it wouldn't make a difference or something like that,
I think as an entrepreneur myself, the easiest solution for them is going to be to not get involved in picking and choosing sites, because it's the same reason companies don't take a lot of stands in politics, because the moment you take a side, you eliminate customers. Yeah. So the moment you eliminate Bing is the moment you lose 5 people's business. Yeah.
Well, I think what's going to happen is that one company is going to come in and be like, we don't block anybody. Yeah. And they're going to blow everybody else out of the water.
And there'll be some new term, like we're a free internet provider. Yeah. Yeah. Free, and that's going to
be really sought after by people. They'll be like, oh, do you have a free internet provider in your area?
Yeah. Are you a freedom internet provider? Hashtag America.
Yeah. And all the other companies are going to be like, oh shit, we need to put freedom internet provider in all of our advertisements.
Yeah. And to meet that standard, to get on that Wikipedia page that lists all the hashtag America freedom ISPs.
Hashtag America, hashtag freedom.
They're going to have to not do it. Yeah. This is how it works. This is how it could work. This is how, this is why you shouldn't, I mean, as funny as John Oliver was, we can't knee-jerk jump on the status solutions. They are never the right ones.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. This has been Disenthrall. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Links to the socials in the description. Drop us an email if you liked it, if you found it, if you liked it, you hated it, you disagree with it. We want your opinions.
Yeah. And if you liked it, give us a like down there.
Yeah, like it up.
Yeah, buddy.
This is the first time we've ever asked for likes.
Yeah.
Kind of feels weird. Kind of slutty. Not sure. Not sure. Like and subscribe. Look, they know they can like and subscribe if they want. I don't want to ask for it.
Give us a like.
They know how YouTube works at this point, right?
Right.
As long as it's not throttled.
Hey, yeah. Thanks for listening, guys.
Peace out.
Bye.
Hello, and welcome to No, I can't laugh on the very first line of the very first episode of the show.
Hello.
Hey, clown shoes.
I'm giddy.
Damn it. All right. I'm doing this. Hello, and God damn it. It's just so funny.
Bro, you gotta stop laughing. Discussion. That was a weak ass fucking clap.
Want to do that again? There you go.
I was like,
you sure you're recording over there?
yeah, dude.
Is it red?
Yeah, it's red as hell.
Stops them from keeping an eye on things because the government will handle it now, right? I mean, this is what it does.
Sorry.
But I mean, this is where we live, right? So only the government is quite inept at doing just about anything. When force is used to attain an end, it always turns out worse. You're not supposed to laugh at this part. This is the okay.
It's so bad.
It hit your side first.
Bailey? God. Holy shit.
Get up here.
We can pick it up from a point, but I couldn't take it anymore.
I could have rolled through it.
Dude,
Yeah.
that smelled terrible. I couldn't just be randomly laughing during that.
That was like the serious part, and you were like,
I'm sorry, that was just too bad.
we need oxygen. It definitely hit you first. I didn't know why you were laughing.
Okay.
And I was like, dude, I'm rocking this and you're laughing. And then I was like, oh.
It's like, what the fuck is happening?
All right.